Alrighty, we are streaming, and I think that we should be pretty good here. Mic looks good, audio levels look good, webcam looks good, new webcam, I might add. Um, I guess I will link the stream to some people here. Actually, I can copy the link, can't I, from here? Let me do that. Here it is. I don't have a thumbnail yet. So I'll explain a little bit about this and why it's so late. Well, actually, there's no good reason why it's so late, so maybe I won't explain that. But I'll just do a little kind of pre-start stuff while people come in. I don't want to wait too long, though, so that people who watch this in the future don't have to wait for the start of the list. I think that's just about everyone I've linked it to. Maybe one more person. Hope the audio is good. I got a new webcam and a new USB dock. Okay. Hey, Zatchbill Gamer, welcome. Good to see you. So, yeah, this list is very late this year, and that was mostly due to laziness. The prep, it takes a while, and it doesn't take, super long compared to some other things. Maybe in total it took, I don't know, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, but that was still just a lot. It was a daunting thing for me, and combined with just I don't know how much stuff I've been doing, how much media I've been watching and playing. I was just like, well, I'd much rather play a cool game than prep for this list, even though I want to do the list. So I'm probably going to remedy that this year by kind of doing stuff for every movie. So when I see a movie, I would log it in letterboxd. I would write my brief thoughts for the notes, which I have. I have 8 pages of notes here on each movie. And then I would get a poster image for the slideshow. So Mario Amador, is this Marco? I don't remember. Don't you just love it when people make year-end lists excessively late? I mean, the intention was to do it latest late February, which for me is not so bad because I can see every single movie as it comes out. I got to spend the first couple months of the year catching up on movies I missed from the last year, especially Oscar stuff, which is often like there's usually sometimes not a good way to see those in theaters. They some have very small releases, and you have to kind of catch those on streaming in the lead up to the Oscars. So that makes sense. You're the hipster from the ZB server, okay? Right, I know you then. Welcome. Thanks for coming in. So that makes sense to me. Yeah, waiting until almost June, a little silly. I am glad I got in before the year was halfway through. Other than that, I haven't been doing too much lately. I'm going to see Mission Impossible tomorrow, the new one. Very excited about that. I watched Mission Impossible 3 recently to kind of prep for that because I never fully seen 3. And I'm just getting hyped for the Switch 2 releasing. 2 a T, the new game by Keita Takahashi, is coming out very soon. And then eventually Death Stranding 2 next month, which is kind of the... Oh, there's Marco, welcome. which is kind of the biggest pop culture event for me almost since like I used to get really hyped for stuff as a preteen, like Cloverfield. Like that honestly maybe since 2008 with Cloverfield. I don't know if I've been quite as hyped for something since then. Maybe Pacific Rim. No, MI3 was not the Brad Bird one. MI4 was the Brad Bird one. Um, MI3 was J.J. Abrams, which is actually I think his first film that he directed. He was a TV guy, before that. Um, okay, so I'm glad we already have some people in the chat. I think we can go ahead and get started. Uh, so a couple notes before we begin on the list. 10 more movies than last year I watched. So this is gonna be quite a list. If anyone has to duck out of the stream, I don't blame them. You can always come back and watch later. Vuvuzela says, Night Rain, let's go, even though it doesn't seem your vibe. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad for the people who are going to play that, and I probably wouldn't mind playing it. One of the main reasons I don't want to play it is just why am I going to fight Dark Souls bosses in a game if I haven't played the Dark Souls games? It seems like kind of a spoiler. And to have them be easier because you're playing them with other people, it's like, it's a little silly. PS Vita, yeah, you've been talking about in the Zashbell Discord. That's cool that you're a Vita collector. So we have 10 more movies than last year, so I really should jump into the list. And one main question I want to ask was this year better than 2023? Was 2024 better than 2023? Because I had some negative things to say about 2023 in comparison to previous years. I don't like being negative, but that's a question we're gonna think about as we go through. So to start with the worst movie of 2024, in my opinion, Rebel Moon Part 2. What was the director's cut name? The Curse of Forgiveness was what it was called. So the Rebel Moon movies came out, I want to say, the originals came out Part 1 2023, Part 2 early 2024. Then the director's cuts both came out later in 2024. I only watched the director's cuts because the director's cuts were announced before the actual movies came out. So why was I going to go and watch these movies when I knew there was an R-rated director's cut coming? And I'm glad I did that. The director's cuts, yes, Garglemesh, this is my number one. You're coming in right at the end here. So it was a good choice. The director's cuts are very long. I don't know if I would say they feel as long as they are, but they definitely do feel quite long. So what do I have to say about Rebel Moon 2? Rebel Moon 2 and Rebel Moon 1, they kind of meld together in my mind. Rebel Moon 1 is actually it's like a few spots higher on this list. We'll get to it. And I can't entirely say I know why Rebel Moon 2 is so much lower, or why Rebel Moon 1 is so much higher. I think at its best, Rebel Moon 2 is better than Rebel Moon 1 once it gets towards the end, once it starts building up for future movies that we don't know if they're going to happen. Once they're raiding this whole spaceship, she's raiding this whole spaceship, and it starts exploding and stuff. Like I said, the final quarter is pretty cool. We all know that there is way too much farming in this movie. That's the common joke about Rebel Moon 2. There's an obsession with farming. There's people picking up grain and it falling out of their hands in slow motion. It's just silly. And honestly, when I think about this movie, this one is 2 hours and 50 minutes. I have no idea how this is 2 hours and 50 minutes. I do not remember that much of it. It's just the village defense from the Magnificent Seven, or Seven Samurai, what have you. That's pretty much it. It's the prep for that, and then some flashback stuff with the main character, which isn't as interesting as you hope it's going to be from Part 1. And then the finale stuff. And I don't know how this is 2 hours and 50 minutes. The thing I like the most about the Rebel Moon duology is in the director's cut, I like how the laser guns blast through people and they make like molten hot glowing goop where it hits them. That's pretty neat. That I like. And like I said, the last quarter is pretty cool. The final fight with the villain is good. But let's move on. We're not going to spend, if we spend this much time talking about the worst movie, I fear for how long this stream is going to be. Number 50. Get the controls here for the slideshow. Boom. Unfrosted. So I did not go into this movie already pre-hating it. Some people don't like Jerry Seinfeld. More people don't like Amy Schumer. And just the movie in general is a bizarre sort of thing where it's like the made-up story of how Pop-Tarts were created. And it like kind of was sponsored by Pop-Tarts, which I don't know if... I don't think it was that from the start. I'm not sure. I think it was an idea. Jerry used to do a stand-up bit about Pop-Tarts. So I think it was always a passion of his. There are aspects of this that I like. I like that it's a silly, weird comedy, which we kind of need more of. We do kind of get some more of those these days, just like really silly comedies. I like Christian Slater as the evil milkman. I like Jim Gaffigan. There's not really much more to say than that. There's some funny cameos. There's some surprising and weird jokes. There's some good child actors in it for some reason. I'm not sure why. Other than that, not much to say about it. I like Pop-Tarts in general. I almost always have some Pop-Tarts on hand. They did stop making my favorite flavor, the chocolate chip, though. Number 49, Emilia Perez. One of the most hated movies of this year. So this is pretty low for me, but honestly, I don't watch movies that I like straight up think I'm gonna hate. So it's very rare, and I probably went through this last year, that there will be a movie, even at the very bottom of my list, that I would just go like, this sucked. I hated this movie. I usually don't do that. So like, for instance, let's see what I rated Emilia Perez. 4.5. Rebel Moon Part 2 was the only movie on this list. 4.5 out of 10, of course, not 4.5 stars out of 5. Rebel Moon 2 was the only movie on this list that got a 4 out of 10. Emilia Perez was kind of a big Oscars movie. You could say it was Oscar bait, for sure, Mario. And Emilia Perez is well made in many ways. I think the director has made several movies. Visually, it looks good. It's also extremely sloppy in many ways, is a good word to describe it. I don't really remember it enough that I can go into exactly how it is sloppy. Other than the ending is super quick and bizarre, how they resolve everything. But it does just feel like it needed another pass, you know, at the screenplay, at the edit, whatever. At kind of maybe how Zoe Saldana and everyone else are emoting during the musical numbers, which I'm sure is what the director intended. It just comes off as super weird. The bad music of the movie didn't bother me that much. If anything, it was pretty funny. So that's not something I hate. There are a lot of people who watch this movie and the music like makes them like viscerally sick. And you know, I don't know, look, Zoe won the Oscar. I'm very happy for her because she's been in the business for a long time. She does deserve kind of her flowers, after kind of being in genre films for so long. Mario says the sloppiness might have to do with the fact it's a play to film adaptation. Is that true? I'm not sure I knew that. Yeah, that definitely could. That's often kind of a difficult thing to do. So one thing I do want to say to close out Emilia Perez is to mention something from my letterboxd review of it. One of the most disappointing things about it is that there's actually a really interesting plot in this movie that is about being beholden to someone just because they gave you a lot of money, and then that in itself is not that interesting because, you know, that's just kind of like blackmail or whatever. But then what if this person is like, oh, I'm good now, I'm a good person, and I want to do good stuff with you. And so not only are you beholden to this person, but now you're doing good with them. So it's like, why shouldn't you be happy with how successful you are, the good you're doing? Your life is supposed to be kind of worth it now. What if that's happening and you're still unfulfilled? The movie actually does not pursue this plot line at all. Despite that being an interesting angle, that is not addressed. It is barely touched on. That is not where the drama comes from in this movie. So that was unfortunate. That was an aspect of the movie I found interesting, was Zoe's character working with Emilia Perez to find kind of missing people, but kind of still being unfulfilled in her life. Uh, so let's move on. Number 48, Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. This movie doesn't, it doesn't suck. I mean, like I said, the only movie I gave a 4 out of 10 to in this list was Rebel Moon 2. 5 to me means average. Um, but, there's just not much to say about it, like with all these. There's way too many characters. That's what everyone says about this movie. I agree. There's like 3 different camps of characters: the new Ghostbusters, the kind of old Ghostbusters slash the like ghost research facility, and then other people. Yes, Kimba, there was another Ghostbusters that came out last year. Kumail Nanjiani is pretty cool in it as sort of this like ancient Ghostbuster, or he's a modern guy, but he uses like this ancient ghostbusting technique, which I kind of liked. The villain is pretty cool. It's a new villain, thankfully. It's not Gozer again. And there are some good moments with the classic Ghostbusters cast. Other than that, the movie does not bring that much to the table, and I find it hard to believe that there would be another movie after this. Mario says, I will say I like James Acaster finally appearing in a movie. Yes, I remember him. James Acaster is kind of funny to me because I think most people know him from a single screenshot of a comedy show or a special of his where he does a bit about transphobes, and I feel like that must be quite tough for him to be known not even for a single video, but just a single screenshot of a video. I kind of feel bad for him in that regard because I'm sure he has many jokes, not just the one. He was fine in the movie. I don't know him very well, but he was fine. I'm glad he's can get out there a little bit more. Something that was also discussed about this movie was the aspect of queer baiting, where there's a close female friendship in the movie. People kind of wanted them to get together. They don't. I feel bad for those people because they are spending way too much time thinking and talking about Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire. And in that spirit, we're going to move on to number 47, Rebel Moon Part 1, which in the director's cut I think is called The Chalice of Blood. These are both the director's cuts, like I said, which is why they are on the 2024 list. This one is 3 hours and 24 minutes long. So the total director's cut runtime is 6 hours and 14 minutes, which is why it's good that I watched part 1 like at least 3 months before I watched part 2. I did not watch them close together. I don't know if I could have done that. Like I said, I'm not sure why this is so much higher than Rebel Moon 2. I think there is more of that cool laser gun goopy violence in this one than there is in the second one, so that might be why I liked it more. Duna Bay is kind of cool, but if anything, she's just as cool in the second one. And in this movie, you're invested in pretty much none of the characters aside from the Anthony Hopkins robot, who I think just gets kind of one good moment in the second one, and aside from that, does not do much at all in either of those movies. Yes, this one is shorter than Justice League. Them together are not shorter than the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which I quite like. These not so much. I did not, I will admit, see the twist with Charlie Hunnam coming in this movie. The movie is, in fact, so uncomplicated that I did not expect it to pull a twist with him. So I was quite surprised with that. That's good, I guess. Other than that, there's some good action. You get to see several sci-fi planets, but most of them are kind of boring, and you don't get to learn anything about any of them aside from a couple. And that is all I have to say. Mario says it's kind of like all the Hellraiser movies post-4, where they are all screenplays that had nothing to do with Hellraiser and altered to be Hellraiser movies. Yeah, I'm aware of that. And you're saying how that Rebel Moon movies kind of take from Star Wars, Magnificent Seven. And yeah, it's, I think Zack Snyder thinks he's doing his own thing. I think that's a difference here. I want to mention also both director's cuts have added sex scenes. So they're the R-rated director's cuts. That's how you know. Early on in those movies, they both have sex scenes that aren't in the originals, I don't think. And of course, those come off as like, I know it's a common millennial complaint of don't have sex scenes unless they're serve the plot. But, these felt kind of unneeded. Number 46, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. So from this point in the list, I would say all of these movies are at least pretty enjoyable all the way through. There are no points in these, except for maybe one coming up, where I was just like watching it, just kind of waiting for it to end. For most of these, I was pretty engaged. I was having a pretty good time. Um, and Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is funny. There's some genuinely funny, memorable moments in it. I want to mention a few that I put in my notes here. There's a part with Jupiter Ascending where they mention Jupiter Ascending a few times, which is really funny. Bronson Pinchot, great role in the original movie, returns, and his return is very funny and worth it. There's a great part where Axel tries to do one of his bits to get a free hotel room at a hotel, but he is just too old and tired to continue. So he says, you know what? No bits. Just how much is the room? Which I felt was really funny. That's a very funny sort of like, remix of something from the original. And I like the relationship with his daughter. Not much more to say about this one. The treatment of the two cop friends from the original is bizarre. Uh, Judd Hirsch is barely in the movie. Or is it Judge Reinhold? It's Judge Reinhold, isn't it? Judd Hirsch is a different guy. And then the other guy is so old that you can tell they couldn't do much with him. The actor has, in fact, passed away by now. And there's a scene for the end when Judge Reinhold and the other guy are in a shootout in the same. They're right next to each other, and you can tell they're not even in the same room during that. Which is rare that I can tell when that kind of stuff's done with special effects. I normally don't pay attention. Here I could tell. Moving on, number 45. Gladiator 2. I don't really know why this movie exists. I think that's what a lot of people said when it was coming out. It was pretty fun to see in the theater. It was cool to see a naval battle in the Coliseum, which you hear so much about the possibility that might have maybe happened. And I like the Emperors. I think everyone likes the Emperors in this movie. Joseph Quinn and Fred Heschinger, who is an actor I like a lot, and I think should have been the young Willy Wonka as opposed to Timothée Chalamet. They were both very good. The finale is very weird in this. The way the confrontation is done and the fact that you can tell most of the surroundings of them are CGI, I genuinely kind of felt like they were going to start like zapping each other with magic missiles and stuff and magic lightning during the finale of this, him and Denzel. They didn't do that. But however, the third act is pretty damn different than the original movie, and I like that. I like that they didn't just want to do a take on the third act of the original. Unfortunately for Gladiator 2, I think it is going to primarily be remembered for an SNL sketch where they try to turn it into a musical. I think a lot of people, when they think of Gladiator 2, whether they saw it or didn't see it, I think are just gonna think of that sketch, which was a good sketch. Number 44, Terrifier 3. So I like two of the Terrifier movies. I like 2 and 3. 1 and All Hallows Eve, the kind of prequel thing, are not very good. Terrifier 3 is shorter than the second movie, but it's not quite as good. It does kind of come off as more of the same. What 2 does, especially how 2 escalates from the first one, is so shocking and crazy that 3 does not really compare. However, I did still enjoy it. I get why Vicky is there. Vicky she's in the first couple. She's kind of a more major character in the first movie. She's kind of a villain in this. I get why she's there because they want Art to have someone who can do just as much violence as he can as a partner. However, I like the little girl from the second movie better. She's just more interesting. Obviously, they did not want to have a little girl doing the kind of visceral violence or even being present for the kind of visceral violence of Terrifier, especially during the climax of this movie. I think that's why Vicky kind of replaces her in this. But the little girl is a much more interesting and better designed character. I also don't like them replacing and then killing a main character from the second movie. I felt that was extremely bizarre. I don't know how much I want to spoil in this list, but one of the main characters who survives the second movie is sort of fundamentally replaced by a younger, more like, I don't know, cuter, you might say, character, and then also killed off screen. And that really bugged me. It was like, well, if you're going to try to have an emotional through line between Terrifier 2, 3, and then upcoming 4, don't cheap out on it and replace one of the characters. Like, I don't know why you felt you need to do that. However, Damien Leone, the director of these, I think is poised to bring it home in a really good way in 4. I believe 4 is intended to be the last one. He wants to go into some of Art the Clown's backstory, and I feel like if he can do some creative violence, practical effects, and kind of bring that backstory that people do want at this point, I think Terrifier 4 can maybe be the best one. Moving on, number 43. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I put up the Love Actually parody poster for this just because I like it. Gargamesh says, thank God that Terrifier is ending with 4. Okay, so Sonic 3, and this is maybe the first part of this list where people are really going to go, hey, I don't agree with this being so low. But like I said, I like all these movies. I kind of like Sonic 2 more than this one, I think, but they are about as good as each other. And I enjoy all these movies, especially as a theater experience, seeing it with a theater full of people, many of whom are either fans of the movies or fans of the games, is always really fun. And it was in this one. Jim Carrey is really good in this, playing the dual role. They need to stop killing him if they're going to keep bringing him back, which, I mean, we don't know that they're going to or not going to in Sonic 4 at this point. I kind of hope they don't. I feel that Stone is a viable replacement for him. People like that character a lot. Or just have Chaos or whoever, Metal Sonic, whoever, be the villain in 4. And we don't, I would say we don't need Dr. Robotnik, right? The audience disagrees. Every time a Sonic movie comes out, Sonic, at least after the first one, when people didn't think it would be good, period, you hear people saying, I'm seeing this for Jim Carrey. There are people who are not Sonic fans who really don't care about these, other than that it is the only place where you can see the beloved childhood icon Jim Carrey in the current day. And people go see it for that. I have no doubt that if 4 comes out and Jim Carrey's not in it, it's going to make much less money. I still think it might be the right thing to do for these movies. There's a good balance with the human characters in this movie. They show up enough. They have some good gags that I like. I like when they go back to visit Maddie and it's not James Marsden. I don't know. I want to call him James because that's the actor's name. Tom. There you go. I got it. I can remember things, like I'm not doing this whole nobody remembers the names of the characters. I'm tired of hearing that stuff about Avatar. I like when they go to visit them after they're gone for a while and they have all these new hobbies, but then it ends up that they don't actually like it. They just want to go on another adventure. I thought that was funny. And this movie features the Traveling Wilbury song, End of the Line, which is one of my favorite songs. So I can't possibly hate that. Keanu is good, of course. There's not much more to say than that. Number 42, Carry On. This is a Netflix movie that I think was pretty popular when it released. People just found that it was surprisingly good, surprisingly enjoyable. I think the director, Jean Carret-Serra, is a French guy. He's good at this kind of stuff. He did a movie a few years ago with Liam Neeson called The Commuter that I also enjoyed and just had a really good time with. It was the same with this. Chicago Otaku, welcome. I have a good idea of who that is. So this is another really enjoyable thriller with Taron Egerton and Jason Bateman coming in as the villain, and he does a great job with this. They knew exactly sort of how, they knew exactly what to do with him, where as a villain, you're going to most want to play with just how he talks. So for most of the movie, he is a voice on a telephone, which is exactly the way you want to do it. And in the times where you do see him physically, he ends up being like pretty imposing. He's just this guy. He doesn't necessarily look scary, but he still is scary just for the power that he has. Complaint about this movie: I did not buy his girlfriend being this upper manager type. She is like this very tiny woman who, no offense to this actress or her at all, she looks like she's like wearing a businesswoman Halloween costume where it's like pink or like reddish pink, and she has makeup on, and like I unfortunately just didn't buy it with her. There's a lady cop in the movie who I did buy, Danielle Deadweiler, who I think was in Jean Collet-Serra's movie this year, The Woman in the Yard, which is more of a horror thing that I didn't see. the girlfriend, it was bizarre to kind of see her interact the way she did in this movie. Not a big complaint, but I did just kind of want to mention that was something that came to mind. There's a very satisfying finale in this movie. Sorry if you don't like propaganda, because this is pretty heavy propaganda here. um, I enjoyed it, and many other people did too on Netflix. Number 41, Wicked Part 1. Possibly, you might say, the biggest movie of the year, I want to say. I'm not sure if it was that in terms of the money it made, but I think it was, in many ways, just the biggest, most discussed movie of the year, which I'm kind of going to brag that I predicted. Some people I talked to weren't fully sure that this movie was going to be a success, which, yeah, you never really know these days. But I was pretty sure, and it was a huge success. I like the third act of this quite a lot. I think the third act is really interesting and engaging and pretty emotional, with the music. The first two acts, not so much. That's kind of why it's as low as it is. I really appreciate all the production design, which is mostly non-CG, that went into this. However, as people have mentioned, a lot of it does look like CG, which is kind of bizarre, even though it's not. It is poised to have a good sequel this year, which has already been shot. I think we're probably going to get a trailer for that pretty soon, because I think they're going to re-release the original and show a thing about it. However, it kind of also feels like it might just be over. It feels like it could be over after this first one, Everything else is like it can be assumed what happens between this and The Wizard of Oz, right? Like, you don't need more story, but I'm sure the more story that we do get will be good and much more exciting than this. We'll at least maybe get to learn what the deal is, or why there's a whole subplot about these animals who are losing their ability to speak in this movie, at least aside from just showing the main character is nice. I don't know if that was the purpose of that. Number 40, If, John Krasinski's If. This movie feels, for whatever reason, like it came out like 3 years ago. I don't know what's behind that time warp there. I appreciate John Krasinski just saying, after making 2 Quiet Place movies, yeah, I'm gonna do this original family movie. I really appreciate that. However, I would say this movie has the most memorably bizarre script, I think, since Alfonso Cuarón's movie Gravity, of just watching it and going, why are they making the choices they're making? Why does this scene come after this scene? Why aren't they doing this thing that I really thought they were going to do? It feels like John Krasinski was just too focused on having fun with it, and the script needed another draft or two. Unfortunately, I can't provide too many specific examples of that because, like I said, the movie feels like it's 3 years old. I just know that's how I felt coming out of it. Fiona Shaw, really good in this movie. I'm glad she got to have a big scene in this, because I always really enjoy seeing her in movies. And there's a lot of fun little voice acting roles and cameos and CGI characters in this. It ends up coming together pretty well. I like the final twist, which you can kind of tell that something's going to happen. You don't exactly know what with the twist, but I do like it. And I like that he made an original, he's continuing to make original movies. Look, this is good. I saw the YouTuber Jax Films was criticizing this on Twitter as CGI slop. And it's like, you're going to go after modern movies, and you're going to go after If? I know I put it at number 40, but let's go after all the other stuff that's way more deserving. That really is just, Borderlands is there, which I didn't see. I don't think I saw, what are the 2 worst movies of last year, Borderlands and The Crow? Didn't see either of them. So, moving on. Number 39, M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. This movie is very fun to remember and very fun to champion and support against people who don't like it. I think watching it is not that fun. And it could have been, I think, a bit shorter. Of course, they wanted to go through the whole concert, which the music is good that M. Night Shyamalan's daughter does for this movie. I did quite like the music, though I haven't listened to it again since then. I both like and dislike the final segment where it moves out of the concert. There's good aspects and negative aspects to that. One thing I do really like about this movie is that if you're a Shyamalan fan or a Shyamalan hater, you know that a lot of his characters tend to act in this sort of just Shyamalan way, especially the young characters, the kid characters, which there is one in this movie, that can sometimes be very off-putting to people. I generally don't mind it. However, in this movie, it feels more intentional when the characters act this way, which I appreciate. The main character is sort of trying to put on something, a kind of personality for those around him for a lot of this movie. So it makes sense for him to act this way. Chicago Otaku says, I know you're a Shyamalan fan. Yes, I am. And I'm looking forward to his next thing with Nicholas Sparks. Should be interesting. So moving on. Number 38, Kung Fu Panda 4. I'm glad that Kung Fu Panda is back. Not sure how much more of it we need after this. Not sure if we needed Aquafina to come in. That would obviously make sense to do a kind of torch passing thing at this point, even though the characters don't really visibly age. Too low for Trap, I assume you mean. I know you're a Trap fan. Yeah. Shyamalan's next movie is co-written with Nicholas Sparks, the author, which seems pretty exciting. I think that'll be very interesting. So this movie is enjoyable, not as much as the other three. Pretty much the entire Kung Fu Panda trilogy is really good. They have really good connective tissue between each movie of what they choose to address from previous movies. This movie kind of does still have that with how they bring Kung Lao back and some other things they address. And I also really like the focus on Poe's two dads. Bryan Cranston voices the panda dad, and the great James Hong voices his adopted duck dad. I don't know how much longer we're going to have James Hong, so I really like that he still has a sizable role in this movie. I said something I thought was pretty funny during my review of this. In my letterboxd review, this is actually all my letterboxd review is, which is that while watching this movie, I thought, wow, you can tell James Hong sounds older than when this series first started. And James Hong was like 79 when this series first started. You can still tell he sounds older than that. I don't know. I think what you say, Kimba, about me having this higher than Sonic 3, I might just kind of be a kind of love for Jack Black as a voice actor. And then also just liking the series kind of a lot. And, liking the rest of the cast that isn't here. Obviously, people were missing some of the cast in this movie, being the Furious Five, who were not in it. And I kind of would like to see them back if they do a final Kung Fu Panda, or should be a final Kung Fu Panda movie. Number 37, I Saw the TV Glow. So, listen. I want to be mostly positive about this movie, but when I said earlier that there were almost no movies on this list where I was like, while watching it, this was maybe the movie where I was kind of like that during it. I think it's pretty boring. I think my favorite thing about this movie is the production design, the visuals. I very distinctly remember how the grocery store looks in this movie. Which is just really interesting. Kind of the way they play with lighting in this, the fun zone that he works at too is like this. Yeah, I know you disagree with me about this, Gargamesh. And look, this is a movie that is for people who like certain things in movies, and that's totally fine. I love that movies can be pinpointed at certain audiences. That's great. They can do that. I like that the ending has humor in it. That's a compliment that I would give to this movie. I really like how the ending is both quite disturbing, but the final kind of button on it is humorous. I think that's really good and weird and memorable. So I am, in the end, going to say Brigsby Bear. If you're looking for a movie about a fake TV show that has a talking moon as the villain, Brigsby Bear is the one you're going to go for. But I did like I Saw the TV Glow. I think, what this movie has meant to people is very important, and I would never want to step on that. But yes, the ending is sad, Chicago Taku, but that the ending is also the final seconds of this movie you can't say that they're not kind of funny. I think they're intended to be a little funny. Number 36, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is part 1 of Hot Ape Summer. It happened in 2024. Part 2 is coming up. In the poster, I wanted to feature The king, his name is Maximus Caesar, who is played by one of my favorite character actors, Kevin Durand, who came back this year with a couple movies after me, at least, not seeing him in quite a while. Um, I really like Kevin Durand and his roles in Lost and The Strain, and going way back to Smokin' Aces when I first saw him. Um, Big fan of that guy, and it was really nice to see him kind of get compliments for playing the villain of this movie for his motion capture. He loved to go on talk shows and things. I saw him on multiple shows and podcasts doing the character and the ape and talking like him. Overall, this movie obviously looks really great. It has some super impressive CGI shots with these ape, very impressive performance capture. Um, and it is a potentially good start to another trilogy, but with the sort of final twist that they're going to maybe use to lead into other movies, there's kind of a concern that the trilogy could be too much like the last one. Of the last one, I have only seen, I forget what the second one is. It's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, right? Dawn is the second one. I've only seen the first two of that trilogy. I still need to watch the third one, which I think is War, but there's no real saying that the continuing movies of this trilogy won't just be Rise of the Planet, or sorry, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes again. There's not much confidence in that. We don't know if these movies are happening. They're not going to have a director because the director of this movie is busy doing Legend of Zelda for 2027. So if they want to do more anytime soon, they're not going to have access to him. Unfortunately, the characters in this movie, they're just not compelling yet. Spoiler alert for this one, the villain does die. And we just don't have too much to look forward to aside from that final twist concerning the humans. For a movie named Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, the kingdom in this is like very unimpressive. It's like one old, rusted, desiccated cruise liner that the king lives in, and then this area outside where like the apes try to open a big vault door. Like, what is this, a kingdom? Like, where do the other apes live? They live in the bottom level of the ship, I guess. Like, where do they? It's not a kingdom. Anyway, that's my main complaint about this movie. Moving on, flow. So I would say, along with I Saw the TV Glow, this is the biggest kind of discrepancy on my list compared to the list of others. I think both I Saw the TV Glow and this are probably extremely high on others' lists. Flow is quite low on mine. However, I did like it a lot. It's just that this kind of movie, similar to I Saw the TV Glow, kind of just doesn't really appeal to me specifically. I really like, it's a beautiful movie. I really like how the water looks. I like how the nature looks. I think this filmmaker will have a long and good career treading on some of these aspects. I like how realistic the animals are. Because there's no dialogue, it was pretty hard for me to regain focus with this movie when my thoughts wandered, which happened a few times while I was in the theater for this one. One thing I really like that I have to mention, and did mention in my Letterboxd review, is that this movie clearly takes inspiration from one of my favorite creators of all time, Fumito Ueda, who made Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian. It is essentially confirmed that the director of this movie is a fan of Ueda. He made a tweet previously where he was very happy that Ueda had seen a short film of his. And you can see a large windmill in this movie that is pretty surely a reference to Eco. So that made me very happy, realizing that when I was in the theater watching that, going, oh my god, this guy likes the same stuff I like. That was very nice. Number 34, A Quiet Place Day 1. Quiet Place stays winning. Hasn't failed yet. I really like that. However, I don't think they should continue for too much longer, especially with the kind of big win that humanity had at the end of A Quiet Place 2. I think they should do one more movie that combines these two stories, namely Joseph Quinn, who is kind of the going further, going to be the main guy from this side of it, and obviously the family from the main series. Chicago Otaku, The Day the Earth Blew Up, is not on this list because it's a 2025 movie. So you're gonna have to wait for the next one to roll around for that to happen. When I was prepping for this, I was like, oh, what about this movie? What about this movie? And I realized, oh wait, those are 2025 movies. So that'll be for the 2025 list. I like The Day the Earth Blew Up though. I'm not sure how high it's going to be. I actually have not started my 2025 list yet. I probably will very soon. Rank the movies I've seen so far this year. So yeah, as for the cast, I always like seeing Lupita Nyong'o. I'm a fan of hers. Joseph Quinn was very good. This was the first thing I've seen him in since Stranger Things, but he's now just kind of coming up in a lot of stuff. I did not know he was English till I saw this movie where he uses his normal accent. They bought Jaimon Hanso back for a little bit. Dude is always getting the short end of the stick in these high budget movies. The only high budget movie I've seen, because Jaimon Hanso, he does like a lot of blockbusters, a lot of high budget movies. He barely gets anything to do in any of them except for the Kingsman prequel, The King's Man. He gets a fairly big role in that. So if you're a fan of his, maybe go check that one out. We do get to see him in this after seeing him in A Quiet Place 2, where I think he dies. We do get to see him in the beginning of this a little bit as well. And the ending of the movie is great. The emotional through line of the movie is great. The ending of the movie is great. The director of this, Michael Sarnowski, is moving on to do the Death Stranding movie, which I mentioned Death Stranding earlier. And I think I will mention it again coming up with one of my top movies that has a connection to it. And I'm really looking forward to that. The Death Stranding movie is supposed to be an original story, not necessarily connected to the games, which I think is awesome, and I can't wait. Number 33, Drive Away Dolls. So we're definitely steadily getting kind of better and better with these movies here. Drive Away Dolls is quite a good time in the theater. I watched it with some friends. I had a good time. I think it's really funny what the MacGuffin actually ends up being. I think the ending is really funny of this movie, and it's enjoyable pretty much the whole way through. It was directed by one of the Coen brothers. I think the sillier, more fun Coen brother. Funny poster here as well. And you can tell he brings that aspect to it. I do think the two henchmen in the movie I like quite a lot. I think the way their story ends is pretty disappointing and weird. That was unfortunate. I really like Geraldine Viswanthan from this. It was cool seeing her in Thunderbolts. I look forward to seeing her in more. And of course, Margaret Qualley, who was always good. Yeah, look up Drive Away Doll, Chicago Otaku. It's a good one. Number 32, Lisa Frankenstein. This movie, I think, is probably coming in quite a bit higher in my list than for people who have... that was my phone. People who have seen a similar amount of movies to me. I also had quite a good time with this one. Gave me a similar kind of feeling to Drive Away Dolls. It's another silly, fun movie. This movie sort of is largely kind of a rip on Heathers. Still, it is quite enjoyable. It's visually fun to look at, the colors, the clothes that people wear in this. And I think the Diablo Cody script is pretty good, if I have to say. I think Zelda Williams, of course, daughter of Robin Williams, did a pretty good job as a first-time director. One note, the apathetic dad in this movie is also the apathetic dad from Stranger Things. He plays the exact same role in this movie as he did in that. Kimba says he saw this. That's cool. Glad I'm not the only one. Fun fact, the same friend is owed a Pokemon battle from the Sprouse sibling. Wow, how'd that happen? The Sprouse guys are doing some interesting stuff. I think the one in this, which one is, can I see which one is? I can't see what it's Cole. Cole's the one in this. I think he's the main one. I think he's also the one that is voicing Yozora in Kingdom Hearts, who's going to have a big role in the next game. I think Dylan has kind of receded a little bit. But, they both seem happy, so good for them. Moving on. 31, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. Hot Ape Summer continues with this movie. Unfortunately, I think these are the only two. It would have been cool if we could have 3 or 4 ape movies. Fortunately, we only had 2. Kong is the greatest of the great apes. Kong's story continues to be really good in this movie, which overall I didn't like as much as the first Godzilla x Kong, mainly because it did not section out its monster fights well. There's not really any big one until the climax of the movie. There's not like a big monster fight, which Godzilla versus Kong has three great monster fights. Um, but yeah, I mean, Kong's search for a family, his search for companionship and love, he's just like us, right? And I love that that's something that these movies go into. That's almost my favorite aspect of them. And getting that needle drop at the end, mwah, come on. Maybe tied for End of the Line from Sonic 3 as the best needle drop of the year. I mean, what a great song at the ending of this. And Godzilla vs. Kong also ended with an awesome needle drop. It was wonderful. Something to mention in this, actually another needle drop. I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss plays in this movie at a pretty prominent moment, which I think shortly before this movie came out, Kimba, you know this, was a huge part of the score for another movie that is going to be on this list a little later, which is pretty funny. It showed up in two movies this summer. In one of those, it was a major part of it. There are some really good original monsters in this movie. Scar King and what was that? I don't remember what the ice monster's name was. Shimu. Unfortunately, Shimu got leaked before the movie came out. They're both great. I think they're both going to continue to have a lot of fans. Shimu is like Kong's steed now. So we're going to see Shimu again in the next one, Supernova, which hopefully will be pretty cool. I don't like that Gareth Edwards is not returning for the next one. I don't like that most of the actors from this one are not returning for the next one. Even if they feel that Gia and her mom's story, Rebecca Hall, the great Rebecca Hall, is kind of resolved in this movie, that doesn't mean they shouldn't come back in a further one. Gia is like Mothra's like chosen one now. So is Mothra not going to be in the next one? I don't know. Maybe Gia will be in the next one. They might announce more cast members. So I don't like that, but that's just the kind of problems that the MonsterVerse has been having ever since it started. MonsterVerse, it's very difficult to put together a cinematic universe and have it all be cohesive. Very, very difficult. The MonsterVerse is barely cohesive in between its movies. And of course that Apple TV Plus show, which a lot of people like, but I wasn't a huge fan of. And those are the issues it has. So as long as it can keep putting out good, enjoyable stuff, I will keep watching it. Number 30, getting in the top 30 here. Oof, still got a lot more to go. We're not even halfway, folks. We're not even halfway. One Life. This was a serious movie with Anthony Hopkins based on a true story that you might have heard about of an English man who saved a lot of children from Nazi-occupied countries during World War II, brought them to the UK. Years later, he was kind of nearing the end of his life and just kind of not doing much of anything and regretting the kids that he couldn't save. And then this TV show put him on and had in the audience of the show surrounding him grown up many of the kids that he had saved. Beautiful, touching moment that this movie adapts and also kind of shows how obviously the show was not doing this for fully altruistic reasons. They want ratings just like any show. However, the emotional core of this guy is very touching, and Anthony Hopkins, his performance still have a lot of vitality to them. He's always very good to watch, very fun to watch on screen. I don't know if I would say fun for this type of movie, but still generally, if he's in something, you're going to get a good performance out of him. And it really puts you in the perspective of, like, imagine how it must feel to be this guy. Of course you'd be thinking about the kids that you couldn't save, as opposed to the ones that you could. And this guy's a real hero, but it must have been tough for him. Moving on, Abigail. Hey. Some people in this chat might know that name. So this is a really fun movie. Kevin Durant, number 2 movie this year. Really nice to see him. He's not an ape this time, so that's good. I really like this movie. I think it's very enjoyable, really crazy violence. I do think that this kind of needs a sequel to fully be its own thing. Similar to Megan, where it's like, okay, you have a really good villain character at the center of this. The first movie, it kind of treads on ground that we know. Abigail is kind of, in essence, like sort of a haunted house movie, or like a stalker. It's like a slasher movie, basically, It's a haunted house slasher movie with a vampire. And Uh, it's very enjoyable, but I think it should have a sequel that goes a little bit more into Abigail's past and has her maybe going like more of an adventure or something. And, taking the route that Megan 2 is going to take, where she's like an action hero, might not be a terrible idea. Um, Dan Stevens is also in this. He was in Godzilla X Kong. He has pretty wacky accents in both of those. He is English. I think in Godzilla X Kong, I forget if he's Australian, I think, in that. In this, he has a very pronounced New York accent, and he is also very good in this. Catherine Newton from Lisa Frankenstein, also in this. Good cast in general, and a fun movie. Number 28, Alien Romulus. I know we have at least one person in this chat who really hated this movie. And I also did have some big issues with this. This is one where I would really recommend reading my letterboxd review, which I should link my letterboxd in the description to this, link my ranked list there. Excuse me, first drink of water this whole time. I had some big issues with this, but I think it is very entertaining, and it has really good practical effects. Synthetics stay winning in the Alien series. I don't know if there's in a main Alien movie ever been a bad synthetic, a bad android character, and they just stay winning. This guy David Johnson is awesome in this movie. I can't wait to see this dude do more stuff. And man, they're just of course they're okay. Obviously, one of the big complaints about this movie is how they treated the other synthetic character, which is extremely bizarre. And I'm glad they kind of fixed that a little bit later. I say that especially as a big Ian Holm fan in general, fan of his work. I view him and Bob Hoskins being, they're like brothers almost. You know what I mean? They kind of you kind of feel like they're brothers. They're not. I like both of them. And yeah, I say that as a big fan of his. That was weirdly done. And I'm glad that they improved that for the DVD release, even if it was only a slight improvement. However, generally those characters stay winning. But look, the Alien franchise, you gotta do some new stuff, man. This is still a legacy sequel, as much as it wanted to act like it wasn't. It's still a legacy sequel. It's still treading on the classic stuff, and it needs to do new things. I think a good place to start with that would be its main characters. Look, I'm not saying this franchise needs to abandon having ladies as the main character. That's a very distinct thing that it does. However, let's not have the same type of person as your main character. Let's not have the kind of more, person who's passive at first, who's logical, who's smart compared to everyone else. We don't need that anymore. Like, we can have a space marine like Rodriguez. Was that her name? Vasquez from Aliens as the main character. Let's have that. Let's have something a little more interesting. The main characters are always the same type of people in these movies. That's just one issue I had with it. Overall, good, enjoyable. Sequel could be cool. I think they're already planning one. Number 27, Monkey Man. This was good. Good start for Dev Patel as a director. I like that they lampshade John Wick. This also, I'm going through my notes now. I want to get through I want to get to some of the movies I'm more excited to talk about. They lampshade John Wick in a funny way in this. The guy mentions, hey, we can get this gun like John Wick, which is good, because everyone's going to think of John Wick. I mean, look at that poster. There's a great needle drop in this as well, with Rivers of Babylon by Boney M. And I really like the tribe of trans women who are like fighters, like Hindu fighters. Masks is like really cool, and a kind of bold thing to do, I think, especially I would assume if he wants to, in India. I think just as much as America, I'm sure. Overall, good movie. Good start for him. 26, Blink Twice. I enjoyed seeing this in the theater, though it is an extremely dark movie. There is no subtext in this movie. There is no, well, this is kind of a metaphor. It's supposed to make you think about this. No. This is just this. They're gonna they're gonna show it. Sometimes not a fun movie to watch. I do really like how it ends. I think any plot holes that this movie has are thankfully pretty ignorable. I want to mention, so this is maybe the first, you might want to consider, I saw the TV Glow as this, but this is maybe the first elevated horror movie on this list, which is something that can have different definitions to different people, but it's a very popular subgenre right now. of just kind of any horror movies that aren't like schlocky or generic. Like Abigail is not elevated horror, right? Abigail is like normal horror, which there's nothing wrong with. Blink Twice is elevated horror, and there was so much elevated horror this year. There are several more elevated horror movies coming up on this list, and several more that I did not see. And I'm kind of tired of it. I don't really want to see as many this year, even if many of them were very good. Many of them are high up on my list. Um, I will say, coming up higher than all the elevated horror movies on this list is a pure horror movie that, of course, goes back to the very roots of the genre. Sure, it's not too hard to guess what that one was. Continuing from Blink Twice, 25, Inside Out 2. I quite like this. I don't remember a lot of this, especially the climax. I don't remember the climax of this almost at all. I think there was like a pile of trash, and they like launch from the pile of trash back to the thing. And then what's she doing? She's doing the hockey game where she's really angry, right? Maybe. I don't know if it happens before the finale. It's a good movie. I think the premise is kind of lame. Anyone could have thought of this premise, right? She's older, so we have the teenage emotions now. Okay, it could have been a little more interesting than that. But it was still good. I do find the thing about the production story about them having to, or getting a mandate to make her less gay, is both pretty funny and pretty sad in this movie. I don't actually think they intended her to be gay in this movie, so it's kind of sad where that Disney felt the need to even go in and tell them to do that. It's also it's just a little funny. It's just such a bizarre thing to happen during production. Moving on, number 24, Civil War by Alex Garland, director of the upcoming Elden Ring movie. And I'm glad for it, because he talked about quitting directing after this movie. It looks like he is not, in fact, going to do that. I really like the presentation of this movie. I really like the acting in this movie. I do agree that its messaging is really freaking weird. I agree that its reticence to delineate what sides these people in this conflict are on is really weird. And yeah, no, Chicago Otaku, like, people absolutely did kind of ship them together, regardless of what Pixar and Disney intended or not. But so yeah, Alex Garland definitely did some missteps with this movie. It's still quite an enjoyable movie. Like I said, the acting is really good. The ending is definitely memorable and quite dark. Even if the final decision made by one of its characters is pretty weird. I'm sure Kaylee Spaney, who I think is in this, and Alien Romulus, right? I think we're going to see her in a Hideo Kojima game or something at some point, I'm sure. Number 23. We're already on 23, huh? That's cool. We're getting there, baby. Let's go. Number 23, Deadpool and Wolverine. I did like this movie overall. I think Sean Levy is very good at pulling heartstrings as a director. If you watch Real Steel, if you watch some of the other stuff he's done, whenever he does decide to make you emotional, he'll do it. He'll get there. And, of course, I like a lot of the cameos in this. They're really fun. They're really surprising, the ones that I did not know about. However, that does not change the fact that this movie kind of craps all over the movie Logan. I don't care if they lampshade it. Still doing it. It doesn't matter if you lampshaded it, guys. I'd still kind of prefer this movie not exist. I hate the anchor being stuff in this. That's such a weird and lame aspect. We need stories, and we have plenty of them, but it should be, a core aspect of the MCU that, being a hero, it's about your choices. It's not about some weird arbitrary definition of you being special to the entire universe. And unfortunately, I think since this movie made so much money, the MCU is probably going to take quite a lot from this movie going forward, which we already know that they are from the cast of Avengers Doomsday. So we'll see how that happens. I hope they at least abandon the whole anchor beings thing. We don't need that. Number 22, Argyle. Another huge discrepancy, no doubt, between my list and others on this one. This was a movie that came out early this year. So when this list only had 6 movies on it, Argyle was like number 3 on that list. And I was thinking, for my own safety, I have to get Argyle lower on this thing. Or else I gotta get more locks for my doors. I gotta get more security cameras if I'm gonna keep Argyle so high on this. Thankfully, I was able to get it out of the top 20. Not obviously changing my opinion on it any, just what naturally happened. I still like it. I kind of like it more than the Kingsman movies, which were directed by the same guy. I really like the love story. Might be like the best romance this year, aside from maybe Dune 2. Um, Early, yeah. Did I say yeah? I meant early last year. Yeah. Um, Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard, just a great romance in this movie. Um, I think the whole cast really clearly had fun making this, and you can always tell when that's true in a movie, and that always makes a movie better. There's twists and turns in this movie that I really liked. I really like the stuff with Bryan Cranston and Catherine O'Hara. I think it's really fun and funny. And I think the finale of this, with the skating and all that, is pretty freaking cool. Um, I really don't know what the heck Matthew Vaughn is trying to do with having a cinematic universe where somehow this and Kingsman are in the same universe, even though Kingsman has like massive world-altering events that aren't mentioned in this at all. Lewis Partridge from the Holmes movies shows up at the end, and he's somehow a Kingsman. I don't really know. I don't know what's going on there. Let's move on. 21, The First Omen. I chose the old school poster for this. This is part 1 of 3 of another 2024 movie event, which I dub Nonsense. Nun movies. There are 2 movies last year that deal specifically with nuns. There is a third movie last year that deals with basically nuns. They're very close to nuns. This is part 1 of 3 of Nonsense. Main thing I have to say about The First Omen is just I want more. Keep it coming. This is just really good, really well made, and that's just a common theme with the movies going forward, is that they are just hitting on every aspect. I feel like we didn't used to get like mid-level movies where it's clear that the cinematographer is just really passionate about what they're doing. Good writing, good directing, good acting, good music, good everything. So I really want more of this. I do think the Omen franchise has a pretty limited scope by its very nature. It can't go too deep into the supernatural elements of it. And a lot of the other stuff of just Damien being who he is and being the son of God and like trying to make the world more evil or whatever. I have not seen any of the Omen movies aside from this and the original 60s one, but I think that's already been done with the stuff of him being played by Sam Neill, him being like the president's adopted son or whatever. So I don't know where the series is going to go, but I think it can go on for just a little more. I also want to say this movie, I think, has, in my memory, the best non-jump scare of the year. It features an amazing, I'm pretty sure, practical effect. If you've seen this movie, you probably know what it is. I was just sitting here like, you know, it wasn't quite so scary that I was thinking about it for a long time after, like I was with the painting lady from Stephen King's It. But that was really something to see that in this movie. Number 20, we're going from more of a real horror movie to something that is definitely elevated horror, The Substance. Yes, one of the most talked about movies of the year, The Substance. I see you linked my stream somewhere else, Chicago Otaku. Thanks for doing that. So The Substance I did like, not as much as a lot of other people. I think it's a bit too long. Maybe more than a bit. And it's definitely just kind of the most talked about, most, I wouldn't say controversial. But, I mean, look, this thing not only was nominated for, it got awards. Demi Moore got several awards for this. I think the director got awards as well. And yeah, I did think about this movie quite a lot as well. Though not enough for it to be any higher. It is number 20. That's respectable. I have some friends who really hate this. I had quite a bit of conversation with them about this. I don't really remember what that was, honestly. I think we kind of had issues with how realistic and how silly the movie was. I think there was some discussion about could it have been a little more realistic? Would it have been better to have it be more realistic? I don't really know where I stand in that. I think maybe I might have wanted it to be a little more realistic. My mom also watched this movie. She really wanted to see this because the main character is essentially a fitness instructor, which my mom is. My mom is also in her 60s, so she has, her own worries about aging and things. She took it surprisingly well. I thought she would be extremely grossed out. But, I think the effects being practical helps you kind of deal with it. And this does have some very memorable practical stuff towards the end. More Margaret Qualley as well. Number 19, oh my god, it's more elevated horror. Jesus Christ. In a Violent Nature. I think I put it perfectly in my Letterboxd review, if I do say so myself, when I say this is Son of Saul meets Son of Sam. If you don't know what either of those are, look up Son of Saul. It's a movie. Look up what that movie looks like. You'll get that joke. I pat myself on the back a little for that one. I think this is pretty fun. I like the way that it iterates on classic slasher movie elements, but where it does not do this is in the ending. And I'm not a fan of the ending, not so much as a result of that. At least they're cashing in on that ending and doing a sequel to this. Because the ending, you might say, sort of sets up a sequel. So, the kills in this are very creative. And I don't know, the guy in it, I think he's pretty neat. He's pretty cool. He's clearly inspired by Jason, but he wears like this weird, very, old school, like 1800s firefighter mask. Not much more to say about that. Number 18, Conclave, big Oscar movie this year. And it does have a great cast and great acting. Not much more than that, though. And... excuse me. By what I'm saying and how I'm acting about movies that are at number 18, you can maybe kind of tell how I'm going to compare this year to last year and to previous years. But don't want to be too negative. I really do like Ralph Fiennes. I always enjoy seeing him. I like Stanley Tucci. I like John Lithgow. I like Isabella Rossellini. There's still not much more than the great acting in this. Crisis of Faith, they're just not that interesting to me in movies. I've seen them a million times. I'm sure if I watch First Reformed with Ethan Hawke, that might be a more interesting take on it. I have not seen that movie. Other than that, Crisis of Faith, they've been done. The twist at the end of this movie is really bizarre. If you haven't seen this movie, there is a twist at the end. Very strange, and I think probably works much better in the book with more setup and maybe more after the twist is done. Here, it's quite strange. You wonder, why are they doing this? Why did they go in this specific direction? What is it trying to say? And I don't really know, honestly. The real-world timing of this movie was pretty funny, as we had a real conclave not too much longer after this movie came out. Chicago Otaku asks, is it Oscar bait? I don't know if I would say Oscar bait, but a little bit. Yeah, I would say a little bit. It was the director's first English movie. And I think his last movie, even though it was German language, almost was Oscar bait. He did All Quiet on the Western Front again. Number 17, The People's Joker. This is super unique comedy. One of the more unique movies this year. Very controversial movie for how DC tried to block it from being released. I ended up watching this online from my friends, streamed it from somewhere or something. And I thought this is quite funny. It has a really unique visual identity to it that is extremely low budget, but does kind of make it stand out. It doesn't feel like there's not effort in it. It does feel like there's quite a lot of effort in this movie. And one thing I really like is that, I have not seen too many LGBT movies, too many trans stories. However, the ones I have seen, especially the other one this year, I feel like they do tend to be quite depressing. And one thing I really like about this movie is that it's optimistic and uplifting, especially towards the end. I think that's just really good, and I think there's probably a lot of people out there who kind of need to see messaging like that. I'm sure there are also a lot of people who are really helped by the depressing ones, Sometimes you need a good cry, you know? Sometimes you need something sad to process your emotions. Um, but, you know, this is like, I'm gonna say, like, kind of a good LGBT. Why am I? I'm just like getting you know, I've been going for so long. I can't do the acronyms. I think it's a good movie for allies. You know, there is a great ally character in this of the Penguin, and I don't think it was intended to be an LGBT movie for allies. But I think it ends up being quite a good one. I don't know why they didn't let David Liebehart sing in this. Um, we want him to sing. They should have let David sing. Hey, the People's Joker. Isn't there some other? There's some other movie. I don't know where that is in this list. I don't know. Let's move on. Long Legs. More elevated horror. Let's go. Let's go. The mystery aspect in this movie is kind of bizarre to me. I'm not necessarily sure. It's not very compelling. Like, people were saying it's like Silence of the Lambs. Like, it just kind of feels like it's spinning its wheels when it's doing that. Like, what's the point exactly of him like leaving messages, and like I don't really know, like, of the FBI angle. Like, I don't really understand that. Um, However, it is generally a very good movie. Nick Cage is very good in it. The ending is very disturbing. There is a really good twist, which I said in my letterboxd review. The twist of this movie is that Aaliyah from David Lynch's Dune was using the voice on people, which, if you have seen David Lynch's Dune, look up who played Aaliyah in that movie. Um, Speaking of Aaliyah, we'll discuss her later a little bit. And part of the ending to this is just very disturbing and is very effective. And I don't think I would soon watch it again because of that. It was a very enjoyable movie. And the scene with the mental institution where she goes to visit that lady is very good. The movie says some really interesting things, some sort of pretty subtle themes about movies and kind of maybe true crime and how we view criminals and violence and things in the world. And I like it. I would say I liked Oz Perkins' movie this year, The Monkey, a little bit better. But we don't really talk about movies from this year. Number 15, The Fall Guy. Yes, we are in the top 15 now. These are movies that I definitely have a better opinion of, movies that I would easily recommend people watch. And like other movies on this list, I think this movie is super well made in almost every aspect. And this is just a fun story. It's a pretty big. It's a pretty big story. But there's something about this movie that just makes it feel not like an action movie, not like an adventure movie. It just got this feeling of it, which I think that I would almost describe it as like peak MCU tone. It's the kind of tone that the MCU is missing. Which is funny because David Leitch, director of this, directed Deadpool 2, which was not in the MCU at that point. David Leitch hugely improved on Bullet Train with this movie. He really needs to keep up with this tone. If he keeps going with this, I will see everything he does. I really like the tone this struck between realistic and silly, much better than what he did with Bullet Train, which I also liked. There's great setups and payoffs in this movie. It's just, set up the dominoes, knock them down. Done fabulously here. And this is the movie that I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss is a pretty big part of the score of, which is pretty funny. Maybe my main issue with this movie is that despite being a fun movie, it's still pretty realistic, aside from the movie that they're making being like a ridiculous Tropic Thunder trailer-esque parody of a blockbuster. The movie is clearly supposed to be dumb and stupid and not like anything that would succeed in the real world, as dumb and stupid as movies from our real world can get. And I feel like that is kind of done for no reason. I feel like there's no reason that this could not have felt a little more like a real movie. And to cap off talking about Fall Guy, they got their Oscar. The stunt Oscar is happening, which I'm super excited about. People have been wanting this for a long time, and I think it's just really cool that this aspect of filmmaking, which is I don't care how much AI gets into it, which hopefully is as little as possible. I don't care how much effects get into it. Stunts, I think, are never really going to go away, and it's great to have them represented at the Oscars. So really good for this movie that they got that done. Number 14, Saturday Night. This is the movie covering the first airing of Saturday Night Live. Actually, the time going up to the first airing of Saturday Night Live. This type of movie has been done a lot by now. The stress ride, the tension ride, which sometimes will have little time jumps in between scenes, but often cover one crazy night, like Good Time, or like this kind of does. But even though these types of movies have been done now, this is a good one. Jason Reitman is pretty much always good. He always hits at what he tries to do. And I think he was associated, or his dad, Ivan Reitman, was associated with a lot of the people in this movie when they were working. Many of them are still alive. And there's a lot of good actors in this who portray the real people. One notable exception to that is Billy Preston, who they got... what's the musician's name who plays Billy Preston in this? Stephen Colbert's bandleader who did the music for Soul. He's in this playing Billy Preston for almost no reason. I think because he did the music for this movie, is why he's playing him. But he doesn't look like Billy Preston. It's bizarre. Anyway, I saw this movie with a guy who was a huge SNL fan, and I think he quite enjoyed it as well. And I liked it. Jean-Baptiste, thank you. That's his name. Feels like I assume that's not his real name. Number 13, Beetlejuice. I had a lot of fun with this one. I think, this is weird being this high. It feels weird having this high. But also, I do feel like it's better than a lot of the movies that I put before it. So, if it's going to go wherever it goes. You can tell that this movie was clearly made with a lot of writers, clearly went through a lot of development, different story ideas being pitched. And some of the stuff that ended up in the movie did not need to be in here. However, a lot of what's here is super fun and satisfying. Really good practical effects. Feels like what I remember the first one feeling like. I did not see the twist coming, but 2/3 through the movie, that was cool. And with more focus and, more drafts of the script and really, making use of the strongest elements of this movie, I think this could have been even higher. And I wouldn't mind seeing a third one at this point. Enjoyed this quite a bit. Number 12, The Brutalist. So, this is the first movie on any of these lists that is moved lower than where it would be for its use of what could be termed as AI or some sort of algorithm. I don't know the nature of the AI that was used to alter the actor's Hungarian accents when speaking that language in this movie. However, in my personal judgment, I do feel that doing it for that specific use was going a little too far, was kind of crossing a line, especially when Adrien Brody won his second Oscar for this, which I think is a win that will be looked at very weirdly in the future, if it isn't already. I think people are going to wonder, I don't know if he really deserved that with the use of AI in this movie. Now, I guarantee you, there are going to be a lot of movies that are going to use AI in way worse ways than this that are also going to be nominated for Oscars. So I have a feeling we will see a lot of movies lower on this list. I believe this movie would have ranked closer to number 6 on this list if it wasn't for that. I did quite like this movie. It has a great score. It does have great performances, the ones that where the Hungarian accents weren't altered in some way. Generally, my key complaint with it, aside from that, is that it's not the epic that the trailer made it seem like it was going to be. Even the pull quotes, look, you can see monumental on the poster there. It just doesn't feel that way. He has one major project in this movie that is like, you don't even really see like when it's complete or in use. It's not really a great American epic like people said it was. It's something else, which is a good something else, but it is something else. I don't like to complain about movies based on my expectations of them. However, I don't I feel like the director might have intended it to be that. And just kind of failed. I'm not really sure. Moving on, we are getting into movies that I have much less complaints about, though still some pretty major complaints about some of them. Starting with Joker Foliado. I liked it. I like this movie. I watched this maybe later than any other movie in this list because no one went to see this one in theaters. I did not know what I would think of it. I had a feeling, based on how a lot of fans hate it, hey, I like Last Jedi. I might end up liking this. And goddamn, it's actually good. One of the first things I thought about the original Joker movie when coming out of that movie was, I don't think this guy could keep up being this Joker even if he wanted to. He can't be what the people want him to be. He can't be what the anarchists want him to be. And he can't. That's what this movie shows. And I like that because I thought that from the start. Unfortunately, Lady Gaga is kind of a disappointment. Her character was underutilized in this. She does not really get anything big to do. But the movie is generally super entertaining. The musical aspect is pretty cool. It's actually not that cringe. It's a little cringe at times, but it's not that cringe. Mostly it's good. And I like the ending to this a lot, I have to say. It's a very dark but very effective ending. I like Joker 2, and you know what? There's not going to be another one. I don't think they ever intended for there to be another one. So I think the Joker duology is going to stand as just this really interesting, example of multiple things. For the studio, it's going to be an example of how we need to control these people more. These auteur directors doing their superhero movies. We can't have that anymore, folks. Moving on into the top 10, baby. Let's start with Rebel Ridge. This was a movie that made a big splash on Netflix when it came out and is generally really enjoyable and I think really unique in the way that it does not constrain itself to being a specific genre. I would mostly describe it as a thriller, but often it's not too thrilling. It has a lot of quiet moments, a lot of sort of, I don't know, I use the word procedural, but I'm not even sure what I mean by that. I guess procedural would mean very sure of itself in its pacing. You know, not afraid to take a little time to get where it's going. I think that's what I mean by that. And I really like that this movie is kind of very unique in its way. I like the modern Jeremy Saulnier stuff a lot. I think I like Hold the Dark and this more than Green Room. Both of those I think I might like more than Green Room. I like Green Room. I haven't seen his other ones. And I mean, look, there's a reason that the main guy in this really stuck out to people. He does really well in this movie as this guy who is extremely skilled at hand-to-hand combat, but also has this ethos of non-violence, which is another thing that makes this movie very unique. Despite him holding the shotgun on the poster there, he does not kill anyone in this movie. He doesn't want to kill anyone in this movie. The ending is a little strange with how characters react towards him, but I think there is a sort of surprise twist with an informant and the nature of that informant that I do think makes up for that, and I think is really unexpected and interesting. It's very cool that a movie like this got people to watch it, even if they were a little tricked into thinking it would be like a John Wick. And it seems like most people who watch it enjoyed it, so that's really cool. Number 9, we're in the top 10 now. Look Back. This was an anime movie I was really looking forward to because the original manga one-shot is incredible. This was basically made to be a movie. Excuse me. It is a one-shot that is, I think, 150 plus pages. It's basically movie length by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who loves movies. And the movie didn't disappoint. It was really impressive for a first-time director. Very impressive visuals. I have very few complaints about it. It hews extremely close to the manga, as it should. I do think there was one major conversation that I remember in the manga, which illuminated especially some of the secondary characters' motivations that I think could have been in here that I'm pretty sure was not. And I also think the music was a little too heartstring pulley for this. I think it could have been even more stripped down. Often it is quite stripped down where it's just piano. Should have been that throughout the entire movie. We did not need strings. We didn't need anything to pull at our emotions. But look back, really enjoy. If you like anime, you gotta check this one out. I want to mention really funny conversations about this movie, the discourse about this movie, of being some sort of like song to creativity, the love of pure creativity towards this movie. The way it portrays that is so interesting that I wouldn't necessarily say it's like about that it's, I would say it's pure love for creativity. It shows creativity as being something difficult, being something that you really have to work at and that you may not enjoy. The main character, I don't know if she really seems to enjoy what she's doing in this movie with art a single time. I really don't know if I would say that. So that was really interesting. And it's I don't know. I think that's would lead to some very interesting discussion on this movie. Anyway, moving on. Number 8, Anora, the big Oscar darling of this year. I think it won Best Picture, it won Best Actress for Mikey Madison, it won Best Director. I don't necessarily know if it deserved all that. And honestly, I think the movie's beginning is okay. And I think the movie's ending is okay. I think the middle segment is incredible. Top class stuff. Reminds me of the best parts of Sean Baker's previous movie, Tangerine, which takes place in Florida. So does Florida Project, of course. And he is so good at portraying these just crazy, realistic confrontations between people with yelling and screaming in just the most engaging way. It doesn't matter how many minutes these go on for. And then after that scene in the mansion in Anora when they're looking for Vanya on the boardwalk everywhere, also super, super good. So good that it, and look, the rest of the movie is good, but it's all centered around that middle segment, which really makes it work. That's the planet that it all orbits around. I like all the other actors in this, all the Russian guys. I love Ivan. I love that he's the guy that really got the awards attention for this movie. I love that character. That guy's face, you're so endeared to him from the moment you see him. I'm going to say Rockstar Games. If you're looking for someone to do a little auteur short film to promote GTA 6, give Sean Baker as much as he wants. Let him do exactly what he wants. Doesn't matter if it doesn't match the tone of the game. Number 7, Richard Linklater and Glenn Powell's Hitman. They collaborated on the script, and what a script it is. This is an incredible script. It is propulsive, which I think is a word you hear a lot to describe modern movies. It is fun. It is clever. It is everything you can imagine. Richard Linklater is a great director. I like almost everything he does, from the more fun stuff like, of course, School of Rock, to the more serious stuff like the Before trilogy, which I've seen all of. Glenn Powell did a great job co-writing this and acting in it. I'm a fan of him. My parents are a fan of him. Obviously, he's a huge, huge name right now, and I think he pretty much deserves it. I want to say this. I don't normally say stuff like this. Adria Arjona, very attractive in this movie. Just really like, oh my, when I was watching her scenes in this. And I like her. She's great in Andor as well. Not so sure about the ending, which is a common thing I've said about movies this year. Weird decisions there. I think they could have done a version of it that could have said what the same things that this ending said, did the same things it did, without being quite so extreme. However, there are so many good scenes in this movie, especially the scene where he's confronting her and kind of, wearing a wire is so good and so enjoyable. This one really did not disappoint from what I heard about it being really well liked on the festival circuit. It felt a little bit like Fall Guy in its tone. In the end, it was a bit more serious. But they both involve kind of serious aspects and deaths and mysteries and things. So yeah, it did feel a little like Fall Guy. Number 6. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in elevated horror row right now. We have 3 elevated horrors in a row high up on this list, starting with Nonsense Part 2. which does not necessarily feature nuns, but features Mormon missionaries, which are pretty similar. I am putting this as part 2 of Nonsense. And we are finally at an even higher tier of movies where I have even less problems with them. I think I'm still going to mention some problems. But this is a really high tier of film here. Movies that I would strongly, highly recommend to other people. Movies that I would rewatch in a second if I didn't want to watch other new stuff. And just stuff that I, won't soon forget. This movie is great. This movie is so enjoyable the whole time through. Hugh Grant is incredible. The 2 stars are incredible. Sophie Thatcher is already a big name. The other star of this movie, I think, is also going to be a big name. I did kind of predict what they would do with how these 2 characters end up being the primary hero and the secondary hero and what happens with that throughout the film. Pretty easily predictable, but still super enjoyable. The ending to this is so good. I've had issues with endings on this list. There are endings higher up where I like them. I'm trying to remember what movies where I like the ending. I definitely have them up here. But Heretic is one of them. I love the ending of this. It ends almost exactly as I would have liked it to. And it is just so good throughout. The rant, the scene of Hugh Grant just ranting in like the second quarter of this movie is so memorable and incredible. It got memed pretty hard in kind of a spoilery way when the movie came out, but I think that got many people to see it. My only question is, I don't really want to spoil this movie too much, how did he get those women together? What's the deal with that? Like, he could have explained that a little bit. That's my only gripe about this movie. Ends up being pretty minor. Number 5, part 3 of Nonsense. We have moved on to the final part, Immaculate. It's extremely nonsensical right now. Pretty much every movie from here on out is such a beautiful movie. The way these movies are shot, every movie until number 1, just looks so freaking good. Cinematographers just at the top of their games, production designers, color correction, just absolutely firing on all cylinders in that regard. And this movie is one of them. I thought this was going to be my top elevated horror of the year. It ended up that it was not. This is my first time seeing Sydney Sweeney in anything. We are getting some Euphoria both here, Euphoria cast members both here and in the next movie coming up. And I really liked her in this. I really liked the whole cast. I really liked the Italian priest who is very nice. Always he's so concerned about the sisters, And I really like the ending to this as well. It leaves you wanting more, but it's a good wanting more. It shouldn't have shown the thing that you want to see. It makes sense that it didn't show it. It's good that it didn't, and I really liked it. This movie is just great, very scary, some good jump scares, some really stunning imagery. And I really enjoyed it, You really wonder, how the frick is she going to get out of here for this one? Number 4, the end of Elevated Horror Row, we have Cuckoo, starring Hunter Schafer, also from Euphoria. Also, the first thing I have ever seen Hunter Schafer in. She does a great job here. It was really tough putting this above Immaculate, but I think what makes it for me is the emotional core that this movie has is almost the best of the entire year. Maybe the best of the entire year. The only movies that could come close to beating it in terms of that are maybe my top 2. The relationship between her and her sister and her feelings about her mother, they really get to you. It's done so well. This is such a beautiful movie. As I said, takes place in some part of Europe. I'm not even sure where, but it is. The architecture is so cool in this movie. There are some really great and memorable scares. The nature of the cuckoo, you wonder about that title from the moment you hear it. The nature of it is really interesting. Almost makes me want to see Cuckoo 2. But I don't think that's going to happen. This is the 3rd movie on this list to feature Dan Stevens. He's also great in this and also does an accent in this. I think he does a German accent. And the finale to this is so exciting once again. Big commonality with the movies high up on this list are great endings. Not always, like with Anora or Hitman, but with the movies this high, it is a big commonality. And it is such an exciting finale. You don't really know when you're watching this movie if it's going to be exciting. It is elevated horror after all. It doesn't have to be exciting. I Saw the TV Glow is not necessarily exciting. This movie, the finale, is exciting. Has a moment in it, weirdly enough, that I think was done in the Series of Unfortunate Events TV series. I don't even know if I... There's a moment where they knock down shelves that for some reason reminded me of that. The hospital. In a hospital. Shelves in a hospital. Just like in the show. That's not in my notes. That's something that's come to my mind just now. And the finale doesn't hold back in this. Really, really enjoyed Cuckoo. And it is my favorite elevated horror of the year. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay, top 3. Now, there aren't many movies left that came out last year. So if you think on it a bit, you might be able to tell what movies I had. Next, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Yes, I did really like this one. Audiences maybe didn't, or at least they didn't go out to see it. It probably did okay on streaming. This is another beautiful movie, but in a different way than the other ones before and after it. There is quite a bit of CGI in it. You don't mention it. You don't notice it too much. The trailers were kind of scary in that regard. But, this movie is truly epic in a way that Brutalist even isn't. The amount of time that this movie covers, the arc of the story in this, you really understand why this was what George Miller wanted to go towards. And no one tells a story quite like, as Hideo Kojima calls him, God George. The way that he paces his movies, the way that he directs his actors, the way that he wrangles his production designers and crews and action crews together, the tanker section in this. I mean, what can you really say about, bar none, the best action set piece of the year? What can you say about that tanker section? I mean, holy crap, seeing that in the theater. I haven't even watched it since, because it's like, I don't want to disrespect it by watching it alone. I want to watch it with what comes before and what comes after. Chris Hemsworth is a match made in heaven for Mad Max. I mean, come on. The biggest Australian actor right now, playing such a crazy role in this. And you get that other guy, what's his name? Luke Brunt? I don't know what his name is. He played Praetorian Jack. So good in this. Also very good in Black Bag from this year. My only complaint with this movie is that the final segment is a little long. You do kind of find yourself wondering, I don't know when exactly this is going to wrap up. It does end up wrapping up very satisfyingly, and you probably would not mind how long it is on a rewatch. So I am going to end up rating this very highly. Also, I'm a pretty big Anya Taylor-Joy fan. I always enjoy her. I would be remiss if I didn't once again, I already mentioned Kojima, mention Death Stranding 2 in relation to this. Not only is George Miller in Death Stranding 2, we now know that the primary location for the game, which I would assume will cover the entire world map, is Australia. So I would not be surprised if we saw some more Mad Max references in that game. And of course, I'm just super excited. I can't stop thinking about it, It's funny, the connection to that game that this movie has. Kimba says Tom Burke is the one who you're thinking of. Yes, thank you. Luke Bryan, which I was going to say, that's like a country singer or something. But yeah, that guy's totally different in Black Bag. He's super tough in Furiosa. So now we move to the top 2. I love these movies. I was looking forward to both of them hugely. Neither of them disappointed. Let's move on to the purest of the pure horror movies. Nosferatu. Of course. This was exactly what I wanted. I think going into this, I don't know if it really could have been any better. than what I was expecting from this. I truly don't know if there's any. Oh, excuse me. Good that we're wrapping up. The plague. The plague of Nosferatu is getting to me. Ugh. Give me one sec here. I'll be back. I'm gonna mute the. Okay. Let's see if we can power through towards the end here. Oof. Let me try to get my mic a little closer here so I can whisper. Nosferatu is great. The cast is perfect. The movie is almost perfect. Bill Skarsgård. Holy crap. What can you really say? I've said that a few times about movies this high. They speak for themselves. That's why you can't say anything. Robert Ayers is absolutely becoming a favorite. I know he's doing a werewolf thing next, which I'm not looking forward to too much. But after that, I think he's doing Labyrinth, which if anyone is going to revive Labyrinth, I don't know if there could be a better choice. The visuals of this movie, the visual references to the original in the castle segment and near the end, so perfect. I watched the original a long time ago, but I remember the broad strokes. The character stuff in this movie is emotional and great. As crazy as it gets, as insane as Lily Rose Depp gets, she's great in this. Though it was supposed to be Anya Taylor-Joy originally, I don't even know if I would have wanted Anya Taylor-Joy after seeing Johnny Depp's daughter, of all people, in this movie. My dad watched this on a plane. That's a cardinal sin. I don't know why he did that. I wish he hadn't done that. I also really want to buy merch for this movie. I want a plushie, like the ones I just showed. I want a plushie of Count Orlok. They actually have big, like standees of him that you can get from the Focus Feature site. I am absolutely going to get this on DVD, on physical media, and I'm definitely going to rewatch this probably more regularly than I rewatch a lot of movies. But I have to move on before my voice completely cracks out. I have suffered physically to bring you this list for almost 2 hours now. Number one, there's only one movie left. It was my most anticipated movie of the year. I knew early on there was probably no movie that was going to beat it, because it was the second part of a story that I already knew was really good. And it was something that could only be, in this way, kind of improved by turning it into a movie. Of course, I speak of my number one movie for 2024, Dune Part 2. Dune's final segment, Dune the book, is quite strange, quite quick, in many ways too quick. And Denis maneuvers this in many ways that make this almost elevated from the book. He doesn't necessarily fix all of the issues that Frank Herbert has, but those are Frank's issues. He didn't necessarily need to fix them. Maybe he didn't want to give Feyd-Rautha his own little adventure. He didn't have to do that. That was up to Frank Herbert to do. He was the one who didn't do it. But that is the only even remotely negative. No, it's not. I'm going to be really positive about this movie before I go into my other complaint. You really understand the story of Dune when you see this, something which Frank Herbert had frustrations with about people not understanding the nature of Muad'Dib and the Messiah and Paul. You really understand it when you watch this movie. What is it, the conversation between Paul and Gurney? You're worried that you won't gain power? No. He's worried that he will. It's that kind of stuff. And look, I just love big, beautiful stories in the theater. I love them. Look at my top 3. Furiosa, Nosferatu, which is big in its own way, and Dune. That's the kind of stuff I go to the movies for. I like big stories. I just do. I feel a little bad that I have this bias sometimes. But I have the bias. And it's there. It's the kind of stuff I really enjoy seeing. You know, the IMAX experience of Dune 1 in this. It's a world like no other. Denis Villeneuve is a guy who can portray that world unlike any other. The world looks completely real. You fully buy into Arrakis and G.A.D. Prime, which looks incredible. Austin Butler is so good in this. The way he emulates Stellan Skarsgård's voice was so surprising and so good. I didn't really know how much I was going to like Feyd-Rautha in this, especially because I think Sting actually did him super well in David Lynch's version from how he's portrayed in the book. I think Sting actually did really well with that. But Denis' version of him is unique and extremely scary. In terms of complaints, which is funny that I'd say more complaints about this movie than I do about Nosferatu, and I really don't want to be negative, but why am I need to talk about my opinions on the movie if I'm going to talk about the movie. This was the primary thing I mentioned in my letterboxd review. Wait. Shit, what was it? Hold on. Let me go to my review here. Oh no, okay. I'm gonna refer you to my letterboxd review for this specific aspect. Go read that. It'll be linked in the description. There's something very specific I have to say about the movie that is a bit of a complaint. The thing I'm going to address in this video is Aaliyah, who's a character I really like from the book, who is a character I really like from David Lynch's version, who is in this movie in a completely different form. I had to come to terms with that. I think I did come to terms with it. If it's something that can get audiences to really gel with this story and not be put off by it and not feel like something was unrealistic, then I can't really complain about this. But man, I wanted to see how Denis would handle that character, especially because he's one of the best at visual effects, altering people's faces in the game. I was disappointed not to see her. I was also disappointed that there were apparently several cutscenes involving Thufir Hawat, played by the great Stephen McKinley Henderson, who's in Civil War. There were many scenes that were cut, and Denis says he's not going to do a director's cut. I would say, give me as much of this as you got. You know, I want to see it. I want to see everything from the book. But look, Dune, so far, the duology, and when it's completed as a trilogy with Dune Messiah, which I think will not be called Dune Part 3, going by Denis' own discussion about it, it's the closest thing we've ever gotten to a new Lord of the Rings, except it's not the new Lord of the Rings. Especially with Messiah, it's going to end up being something completely different, which is for the better. The Dune movies are incredible. Their universe is incredible, one of the most unique out there. I'm enjoying the Messiah book right now. I'm almost finished with it. Already can't wait for the movie. What Denis did with Timothy and Paul in this movie, he is such a memorable character. And there is, if I had to pick, one singular thing, it's obviously just the world of Arrakis. There's nothing like the world of Dune. There's nothing like the world of Arrakis. And we're going to end on that, so we're not too negative. It's still And those issues I have, I had issues that I mentioned. I had a couple issues that I didn't mention that are in my review. Those are really minor in the grand scheme of things. It's all washed away by the pure skill displayed with everything else, and that's really what I wanna put forward here in this review. That's my number one movie of the year. So to wrap up, and I'm very glad that the stream went well. I'm very glad that despite my own physical issues, the technology, you can see the webcam's kind of being jostled here. I think it's not really coming off as too bad. I'm very glad the technology went well. So, was this movie this year in movies better than 2023? Probably not really. Probably about the same, if anything. I think maybe the number ones are a little better. Because, let's look at 2023. I don't have a slide to pull up for my 2023 list. Yeah. My top 5 are Super Mario Bros., Oppenheimer, Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Poor Things. I would definitely say my top 5 is better this year. Definitely, I think the top 3 combined are probably better than that top 5. But this still was not a banger year like 2018 or 19. I'm still waiting for another one of those. But you know what? It doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter that much. Maybe movies are worse in general now. It doesn't matter as long as we get great new movies every year. We're making strides in the blockbuster space. Sinners is in 2025 that we got. I can't really complain. So I won't. Like I said, I have not made my 2025 list. I'm going to start working on it soon, and I'm going to start working on the prep for this stream well in advance this time. So I will do it latest at the end of February 2026 for my 2025 movies. For now, let's just cap it off there, just under 2 hours, which is about what I expected. I am going to go beat the new Doom game, not Dune, which there is a Dune game coming out that I want to play. That's not out yet. This is a Doom game. I'm going to go beat that. Thank you to everyone who watched this. Please let me know your thoughts on any of these movies and your own top movies in the comments. I will read every single one and respond if I can. Seriously, thank you for watching this. I love discussing my thoughts on movies with people. I love hearing other people's thoughts on movies. And I really appreciate that you are interested in anything that I have to say about it. With that, I hope you all have a good night. Thank you, and bye for now.